If I had to buy a camera right now, knowing everything I know after years of testing, reviewing, and honestly wasting money on gear that looked good in theory, I wouldn't pick what most people would expect. And the reason for that is something most camera reviews never actually talk about. Because everybody's out here comparing specs, arguing over sensors, debating megapixels, and completely missing the one thing that actually determines whether a camera works for you in real life. I went through every serious option on the market, and by the end of this video, I'll show you exactly where I landed. And more importantly, why. The camera market right now is genuinely overwhelming. And the frustrating part is that it's not because there aren't good options. It's because there are too many of them. And almost every recommendation you find online is either outdated, sponsored, or just not built for the situation you're actually in. You've probably got tabs open, threads half read, and you still don't feel any closer to a decision. That's not a you problem. That's just the noise doing what it does. So what I want to do today is cut through that. No spec walls for the sake of it. No technical overload, just an honest walkthrough of how I actually thought through this and where I landed. Think of it less like a review and more like watching someone make a real decision in real time. Before we get into the cameras, if you're new here and you want honest breakdowns without the fluff, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell. I drop camera advice, new release coverage, and full rankings regularly. And trust me, what I'm about to share ties directly into something bigger I have coming. Now, let's go. So the first place my brain went was the most obvious one. Something affordable, something small, something approachable. And right now, that's the Canon EOS R50. It comes in at around $680. It weighs next to nothing at 375 grams. It shoots 4K video from a 24-megapixel sensor with Canon's excellent autofocus system doing all the heavy lifting for you. On the surface, it looks like an easy yes. Most people would grab this first and not think twice about it. But the problem showed up the moment I thought about actually using it day to day. There's no in-body image stabilization on this camera, none. Which means the second you take it off a tripod and try to shoot anything handheld, especially video, you're either stuck with a digital mode that crops your frame down, or you're fighting footage that just doesn't look right. And I kept thinking, if I'm rebuilding from zero, I need something I can grow into, not something I'll be working around 6 months from now. So the R50 came off the list pretty fast. But that just made the next question harder, because the next obvious option wasn't as obvious as it seemed. The Sony ZV-E10 II looked like the natural step up. It's around $1,200, it has a 26-megapixel sensor, Sony's fast hybrid autofocus with real-time eye tracking, 4K at 60 frames per second, and a whole toolkit of vlog-specific features. Background defocus, product showcase mode, vertical shooting for short-form content. When you break it down, it sounds like exactly what a content creator needs. And I almost convinced myself. I really did. But then I looked at the stabilization situation, and it was the exact same story as the Canon. Digital only, no in-body IBIS. At around $680, that's a trade-off you accept. At around $1,200, that's a trade-off that stings. You're paying significantly more and still working around the same fundamental limitation. I almost picked this. But then I realized that for a few $100s more, the cameras on the table are a completely different conversation. And that's when things started to shift. At around $2,000, the Nikon Z6 III is where the list gets serious. This is a full-frame camera with a partially stacked sensor that shoots up to 120 frames per second. And not just burst shooting. We're talking pre-release capture, meaning it can begin recording a fraction of a second before you even fully press the shutter. It does 6K raw video internally. Its autofocus works down to -10 EV, which is basically pitch black. And the 5-axis IBIS gives you up to 8 stops of stabilization. A number that sounds technical until you actually try to shoot in low-light handheld and realize what that means in practice. For a hybrid shooter who needs serious performance in both stills and video, this camera earns its price. But I kept circling back to one thing: the lens ecosystem. If you're already deep into Nikon's Z mount system, this decision is almost made for you. But starting from zero means buying lenses on top of an already premium body. and the overall cost of entry starts to climb fast. The Z6 III stayed on my short list, but something else kept pulling my attention away from it. The Fujifilm XS20 at around $1,500 is the one that genuinely caught me off guard. If you've never shot Fujifilm before, stay with me, because this camera does things that nothing else on this list does in quite the same way. It shoots 6.2K open gate video. It has 5-axis IBIS covering up to 7 stops. The autofocus tracks people, animals, vehicles, birds. It's legitimately smart. It has a deep, comfortable grip that sounds like a minor thing until you've held everything else on this list back to back. And then there are the film simulations. Classic Chrome, Velvia, Eterna Cinema, Acros. These aren't presets. These are Fujifilm's decades of analog film science translated into a processing engine. And the images you get straight out of camera without any editing look unlike anything else at this price point. I almost stopped right here. Honestly, if you shoot mostly stills, or you want images that look beautiful without touching a single slider in post, the XS20 is a real answer. But the more I sat with it, the more I kept thinking about where I'd actually want to be in 2 or 3 years. And I started to feel like I was settling just slightly. And that feeling is what pushed me to the last camera on this list, the Sony A7 V. That's where I landed. It comes in at around $2,900, and I know what that number looks like on screen. It's not small. I went back and forth on it more than once. But when I laid out everything I actually need from a camera, stills performance, video capability, reliability, longevity, our ecosystem depth, nothing else on this list covers all of it the way the A7 V does. The sensor is a 33-megapixel full-frame, partially stacked Exmor RS chip, paired with a Bionz XR2 processor and a dedicated AI processing unit running alongside it. What that translates to in the real world is autofocus that feels genuinely intelligent, 759-point tracking with advanced subject recognition, up to 30 frames per second blackout-free shooting with full AF and exposure locked in. For video, you get 4K at 60 frames per second uncropped, 4K at 120 frames in a slight crop, 10-bit log recording internally, and rolling shutter performance that actually makes handheld shooting usable. The IBIS covers up to 7.5 stops. There are dual card slots, which sounds like a boring detail until you lose an entire shoot to a corrupted card. And Sony has done serious work on overheating control so you're not babysitting a timer during long recording sessions. But none of that is the real reason I'd pick this. The real reason is the E-mount ecosystem. Sony's lens lineup, first-party, third-party, adapted, is the most mature, most accessible, and most competitively priced full-frame system in the world right now. That means the A7 V doesn't just serve you today. Every lens you invest in, every piece of knowledge you build around the system keeps paying you back. When you're spending at this level, that longevity is worth more than almost any single spec on the page. The R50 was too limited for where I actually want to go. The ZV-E10 II asked for too much money while still giving up stabilization. The Z6 III is genuinely impressive, but the ecosystem entry cost on top of the body pushed it out of range. The XS20 I loved, and I still think it's one of the best values on this list. But the APS-C sensor ceiling started feeling real the longer I thought about it. The A7 V removes that ceiling entirely. That's what made the decision. Now, if you're still not completely sure which one fits your situation, that's fair. Everyone's coming in with a different budget, different use case, different idea of what they actually want to shoot. So if you want a proper side-by-side look at everything out there right now, I put together a full ranking of every new mirrorless camera in 2026. Every serious option, ranked and compared without the sponsorship noise. That video is right up here. Go watch that next, and I think the decision gets a whole lot clearer. And if this one helped, drop a like. It genuinely makes a difference. See you there.